the weather outside is not so delightful. The storm is a-coming, starting to snow in New York City, but everything's okay. I've gotten 7,000 loaves of bread for all of us to eat. Jimmy, we should be fine, I'm telling you. Welcome to Mets Hot Stove, presented by Citi. He's Jim Duquette. I'm Kevin Burkhardt. Happy New Year to you. It's 2014 in case you just woke up. And hopefully it's the year of the New York Mets. At least that's what they hope. And we've talked a lot about this team going from the winter meetings all the way through. But now in New Year, let's talk about something that hasn't been discussed yet. That's the bullpen. I know you have a lot to say, Jim, and I'm going to start here. Here's who I see in this Mets bullpen this coming year. And certainly anything could happen. They could sign some veterans. But I think when you look at the top, it's going to be Parnell, who appears to be healthy. They want Vic Black to be the guy late in games. There's a reason they got him. It's going to be a lot on his shoulders. Scott Rice. Great year. And then I think late here, I still think you could see Mejia in that bullpen, Mejia or Familia, one of those hard-throwing right-handers there. I then, for the last spot, would love to see a veteran lefty or even a veteran right-hander, just a more veteran presence. They have a lot of these young guys untested in here to have the ability to throw middle of the game or late in the game. I think that's something that Sandy Alderson and company is going to want to have done. Jim, I think when you look at this bullpen, first of all, Jeff Walters, they like him, and I think he's got a real good chance to make the team. Second of all, Scott Rice, if you just step back, I mean, you had the joke, he pitched every day.
He did.
He had a really good year, though, man. I mean, he held lefties to 174 against, and his second half numbers were tremendous.
You know what? I agree. He was the biggest surprise for me last year when you look at, especially when you look at just his overall career and a career minor leaguer, never getting that first opportunity. I was really, really impressed with the job. And Terry stuck him in some tight situations, as you saw, and he managed to get out of them.
So I think Rice is a key cog. Who'll be there late in games. So let's talk about late in games. I know you have your feelings about who is going to be there late in these games for the New York Mets.
Well, I do, and it's very similar, I think, what you had in mind, too. Obviously, it starts with Parnell in the back, and if he's healthy, then everything else kind of settles in after that. I think Rice is the perfect guy in the eighth with a veteran, and I think, really, if you look at it from the Mets, they've been talking about trying to get another guy just in case Bobby's not ready to close out situations. A Kyle Farnsworth, a Kevin Gregg I mentioned back at the winter meetings, maybe less so there, but a Mike Gonzalez who would maybe fit your definition. Lefty, also a closer. That one of those two or three guys with Rice would be perfect in the eighth. I like Black back in the seventh inning. He pitched well, but a little bit off in his command. We'll get into that in a second. But I like Black. I look at Torres, Familia. Those guys in the seventh inning kind of replace that Arzma role. But if you have those three or four guys leading up to Parnell, and Parnell's healthy, that's a plus bullpen. Then you mix in a couple of these young pitchers like a Walters or some of the other guys we're going to talk about. I like the bullpen, at least on paper, how it looks.
All right, so tell me, you're the pro. I didn't know much about Vic Black when the Mets got him. I know this. He throws very, very hard. Seems like he's a pretty confident kid out of Texas. He had 12 strikeouts in 13 innings. But what do we know about a guy who's worked 13 major league innings?
And that's going to be the big issue, I think, is, you saw what he did in the minor leagues. He had 12 Ks per 9 in the minors. But at the major league level, I thought he did a nice job overall, but there's still some things he needs to work on. We know he's got the mid-90s fastball. He's got the heavy sink on his fastball. I like the aggressiveness that we saw out of him. I also like the slider, although it's a pitch that's a little inconsistent for me. I think it's going to be a solid average, maybe even above average, but the inconsistency there is something that I think he needs to work on. The main thing, though, for me is his command. That's what makes it tough to pitch him in the eighth. I think with Terry looking at a game on the line, and you're sitting there with a one-run lead, and he doesn't have quite the sharpness and the command of his pitches, that's where I think that has to come. And I think if you look, I was talking to a couple of Mets about this over the last couple of days, they're not going to give him a job in the bullpen. He's going to have to go in and earn it. I think he's going to be part of that bullpen, but it's something that's going to have to evolve as the spring goes on.
The walks are an interesting thing because you talked about Scott Rice, and I think he's going to be integral in the back end of the bullpen too. But he walked a lot of guys last year too, Jim. But he told me something interesting midway through the year. Earlier in the year he was walking guys too, and he said, he was kind of uptight. He was worried about walking guys. And then Dan Warthen finally said, hey, it's okay if you walk guys. Just the inning, the totality of the inning, get out of the inning. And Rice told me, you know what, I started thinking about that, and I pitched around guys. I learned walking guys is okay. And I think that let him kind of free up a little bit. His second half numbers kind of show that. That's the interesting thing about Scott Rice. So we'll see how that turns out. Another thing about the back end of the bullpen, I think it was discussed a lot with the postseason, rightfully so. This Cardinal way, we'll call it. I mean, we saw their guys come up, whether it was Waka who got a chance, Martinez got a chance earlier, Seth Maness got, all kinds of their prospects got chances in the bullpen. Some went back down, some came up, some started, some were postseason stars. Is this something that the Mets can use to take some of these prospects, throw them in the bullpen, give them a little experience?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, you could throw in a guy like Trevor Rosenthal, who ended up closing, Kevin Segrist, another left-hander. And I think really what you start to look at, teams like the Cardinals, we saw a little bit with the Orioles along the way. Other teams have kind of taken that and copied it. When you bring a guy from the minor leagues and he's been a starter, what the benefit obviously is you hope he's going to be a starter at the major league level. He has 3 or 4 different pitches that he can throw for strikes. But if you don't have a spot in that rotation, there's no reason to keep him buried in the minor leagues. If he can help you and come up and just concentrate on 2 pitches, sometimes we see a tick in the velocity go up. Sometimes we see a sharper breaking ball, and he ends up becoming a reliever at first. Shoot back in the Dodger days, Pedro Martinez got his first start. There's plenty of guys like that. So I think it's a little bit of an old school philosophy, but it's starting to come and resurrect itself.
Oh, well, it worked for them. Why not? John Mozeliak, the GM, when we were in St. Louis last year, told me, hey, well, what's better than major league experience? And if it doesn't work out here, or the biggest thing for him was if they don't get enough reps, innings, then they'll go back. You could always put them back down. That's not the issue. So that being said, if it is something the Mets can use, who do they use it with?
Well, I mean, they have a couple of different options, and a couple of them, right off the bat, they're not going to look at them in the bullpen. But I think let's start with Rafael Montero. Montero's a guy who throws 4 pitches and really fits into this definition. A guy who's pitched at the major league level. We've seen him a little bit in spring training, major league spring training. I love his makeup. He throws strikes. And again, if you were to start him in the minor leagues and give him the opportunity to get up his innings, and then potentially put him in the bullpen, you could do that. DeGrom's another kid who probably fits that as well. He's a great athlete, and the thing I like about him, he probably needs a few more innings of work because he was a converted kid and a position player. But the other kid, Mazzoni, is another kid from the AA who's on the fast track. He's got good life on his fastball. He throws 3 pitches, all of them for strikes. But if you were to take one away because he's in the bullpen, he doesn't need it as much. Maybe that ticks up with a fastball. So there's 3, I think, really good candidates.
I've heard Corey Mazzoni's name a lot in that role, and I think, hey, if there's a competition for the 5th starter here, and DeGrom and Montero, if one loses out, why not put him in the pen? See how it goes. You could always bring him back down to Vegas, where no one wants to play anyway. All right. Well, one name we haven't talked about a lot this offseason, it's Dylan G. He's coming off a career